There comes a phase, subtle, almost deceptive, where your channel no longer feels fragile, where uploads don't die instantly, where views arrive more predictably, where something begins to stabilize. And yet, beneath that stability, a new danger quietly grows, one that has nothing to do with failure and everything to do with comfort. Because comfort is the point where most creators stop evolving, where they start repeating what worked instead of questioning it, where growth slows not because the algorithm changed, but because they did. And this is where the game becomes psychological again, but in a different way. Not about understanding the audience, but about understanding yourself, your habits, your patterns, your tendency to settle into what feels safe. Because once you find a format that works, your instinct is to protect it, to repeat it, to rely on it. And while that can bring short-term stability, it often leads to long-term stagnation. Because audiences, just like the platform itself, are constantly evolving, and what feels fresh today can quickly become predictable tomorrow. Now imagine a viewer who has watched 3 of your videos, maybe even 5. They understand your style, your pacing, your delivery, and at first, that familiarity creates comfort, but over time, if nothing changes, if there's no variation, no new angle, no unexpected element, that comfort turns into boredom. And boredom is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't leave a comment. It simply causes the viewer to stop clicking, to scroll past your content without even realizing why. This is where the concept of Baise Bachender Maini Desire Shambirem creative evolution diatation becomes critical, because growth on YouTube is not just about improving quality, it's about maintaining novelty within consistency, a balance that is incredibly difficult to achieve, because you have to stay recognizable while still feeling fresh. You have to give the audience what they expect while also surprising them enough to keep their attention, and this requires a level of awareness that goes beyond analytics. It requires you to sense when your content is becoming predictable and to adjust before the audience disengages. But here's the challenge. Evolution involves risk, because the moment you try something new, something different, you step outside the pattern that the algorithm has learned to associate with your channel, and that can lead to temporary drops in performance. And those drops can feel like failure, even when they're actually part of growth. And this is where many creators retreat, going back to what felt safe, what felt proven, even if it's slowly losing effectiveness. At the same time, however, those who understand this dynamic begin to approach their content differently. They don't see variation as a threat, but as a necessity, something that keeps their channel alive, adaptable, and capable of capturing attention in new ways. And instead of making drastic changes that confuse their audience, they introduce controlled variations, small shifts in format, tone, pacing, or perspective that keep the content feeling dynamic without losing its core identity. Now bring this back to frequency, and something important becomes clear. Uploading more can accelerate stagnation just as easily as it can accelerate growth, because if you're repeating the same formula without evolution, you're not building momentum. You're reinforcing a ceiling, a limit to how far your content can go before it starts to decline. And this is why some channels plateau even when they're consistent, because consistency without innovation eventually loses its impact. And this is where awareness of audience behavior becomes even more important, because your viewers are constantly giving you signals, not just through views and retention, but through subtle shifts in engagement, slight drops in watch time, changes in click patterns, and these signals often appear before a major decline, acting as early warnings that something needs to change. And those who notice and respond to these signals early are the ones who maintain growth while others struggle to recover. But beyond strategy, beyond analytics, there's a deeper layer to this stage, your relationship with your own creativity. Because at some point, content creation stops being just a process and starts becoming a reflection of how you think, how you observe, how you interpret the world around you. And when you allow that perspective to evolve, when you bring new insights, new angles, new energy into your content, it naturally becomes more engaging, more compelling, because it's not just repeating information, it's expressing something that feels alive. And yet, despite all this, there will always be uncertainty. Moments where you're not sure if a new direction will work, where the results don't immediately validate your decisions. And this is where patience becomes essential. Because evolution takes time. It requires testing, adjustment, refinement, and expecting instant results from every change can lead to frustration, causing you to abandon ideas that might have worked if given enough time to develop. So as you move forward, the question shifts once again from how many videos should I upload daily to how can I keep my content evolving without losing its identity? Because that's the real challenge at this level, not just maintaining growth, but sustaining it, not just capturing attention, but renewing it over and over again in a way that feels natural, not forced. And in that realization, you begin to see growth not as a straight path, but as a continuous cycle of stability and change, of patterns and disruptions, of learning and adapting. And those who embrace this cycle, who understand that staying the same is not an option in a system that's always moving, are the ones who continue to rise, not because they found a perfect formula, but because they learned how to evolve beyond it. And when you reach that point, when you're no longer afraid of change, when you're willing to experiment while staying grounded in what works, that's when your channel transforms from something that grows occasionally into something that grows consistently. Because now, you're not just reacting to the platform, you're evolving with it. And in a space where most people eventually slow down or stop, that ability to evolve becomes your greatest advantage, the thing that keeps you moving forward long after others have plateaued.